All right, it is November 25, 2024 in the US at least, and we've got fairly light agenda so far. Actually, maybe need to pull some of these ones down from next. If you own either of these items, feel free to drop them into the meeting notes for this entry if you are here. If not, we'll leave them for the next one. Um, for anyone who is on the call but does not have access to the meeting notes, by all means, I'll try and drop a link in chat if I can find it. Yeah, there we go. And yeah, just a reminder, this is Kubernetes community meeting, so that means please be nice, friendly, etc. If you don't mind, drop your name in the attendee list so we can keep track of which of our meeting times is performing better. We do alternate between times that are meant to be better for basically areas west of the US versus east of the US. So this is what I would say is meant to be more friendly for folks in Australia in particular. And yeah, I think that's everything. Are there any, I'm not sure I recognize everyone on the call, so usually give a minute or two. If anyone that is new and wants to introduce themselves, have at it. We always love to see new folks join the call, and always interested in what brings you here. So no pressure, but if you do want to introduce yourselves, we'd love to meet you.
I was going to say,
Oh,
I think
nice.
I've seen Elizabeth in stacks of meetings over the last week. It's kind of surreal.
I've only been in like 3, but only to get a bit more context about everything. There's some that I'm skipping though.
Nice. That's awesome. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Cool. All right.
I'm also
Anyone
new to
else?
this meeting. I came to the KubeCon meeting that was there. So I'm
Cool.
Pubul from WSO2. So yeah.
Welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, always good to see folks from KubeCon. And yeah, on the note of KubeCon, if hopefully you got any proposals in if you were trying to speak at this most recent KubeCon, because that already closed on Sunday, like a week after the previous KubeCon, and you already have to have what you want to talk about at the next KubeCon figured out. So yeah, anyway, but welcome. Good to see you.
And day zero
Oh,
event,
man.
CFPs close on December 9th.
It never ends. It never ends.
And then Maintainer Summit closes not too long after that, but I have to go look.
Yeah.
So if anybody wanted to do, I'm sorry, did I get that wrong? Was it the 4th? Arco is correct. Day zero is the 4th of December, not the 9th of December, I believe.
Yeah, Maintainer Summit was a little bit after
There's 2
co-located. I
tranches
don't
for
know.
Maintainer Summit as well.
Right.
So that
But it would
there's
be
an early tranche and a later tranche. The early tranche is for people who would like to get their submission recorded early, hopefully accepted early, so that they can apply for scholarships for travel and stuff, and visas and stuff.
So early tranche if you can.
Yeah. And yeah, I should also note that apparently word is that the main conference CFP had over 2,800 submissions.
Yeah, I saw Chris. Chris A from CNCF post that it's hit the highest number of submissions by far to any KubeCon. So yeah,
you're talking about London KubeCon.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm sure that the I'm sure that the program committee is enjoying their
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally awesome. Okay. The first, oh, come on, where is it? Maintainer Summit, Tranche 1, Sunday, the 8th of December. Wave 2 is Sunday, the 12th of January. I shall type that as well.
Thanks, Flynn.
Cool.
Okay, well, it's been 10 minutes.
I don't know where you're typing that, but wherever you are, thank you. All right, well, let's take a minute and run through Gateway 1.3. That seems to be the main thing for the agenda. We can go ahead and talk about what made it and what didn't. This will probably be a recap for folks that have been looking at the discussion. But yeah, thank you. Since our last meeting, we had a ton of people jump on and vote away, which was really helpful. We froze the scoping around 12 hours. I think it was closer to 13 hours after the meeting ended, which was what we had said. And so the results, oh, I'm not presenting all over again. Sorry. I will, or maybe I was never presenting. I don't know.
No, you wouldn't.
What? Here we go. Okay. Hopefully we are seeing things now. Yeah, so with that said, here's the results. If you know, this is again kind of arbitrary weighting here, but the top four that made the list were cores, listener sets, retry budgets, and auth. And then if you go down as per popular request, last time I added some very rough descriptions here. Hopefully we can get those and translate them into like GitHub doc, so, you know, on our website as well. So this isn't just frozen in time, but we can have this as a reference point for the next time we do release scoping. Really appreciate everyone who recommended things in this release. And one of the things we added for the first time this time is if your suggestion missed the previous release scoping, but you proposed it, we give you some level of bonus this time around. So the top three of the items that were accepted this time had all been suggested in previous uh, release scoping. So that's a good signal, I think, that even if we missed one this time, we'll probably get to it next time. No guarantees, but that definitely helps you out. Yeah, so that is what is in scope for 1.3. If you look at the list, it's a ton of really, really complicated things. So like
Yay.
yeah, this is going to be an insane bit of bandwidth required for, well, really anybody who can help with review here. So what we're trying to do is in this current phase is finalize design details and basically get gaps merged as implementable. And I actually I know I wrote this in Slack, but I failed to add the date here. So gap phase ends on January 21 is what we decided as maintainers. This is a longer phase. We've said it should be 5 to 7 weeks usually. We made this longer because it's the end of the year, and at the end of the year tends to be just overflowing with holidays. And so trying to allow for people to take time off and still, you know, have a reasonable shot at getting these ones in. So yeah, those are the main ones. Thank you to whoever is adding leads here. I'll go ahead and oh, thank you. So on request mirroring, this is Jake. Back in TLS, this is Candace. And policy attachment is, wow, it's great when you see yourself. Anyway, is also is Guy, who is very brave for volunteering for this one, but also, you know, thank you. So those are the main ones. I did want to call out here, like there was a release scoping discussion for standard channel as well, and that helps us get a rough understanding of how many slots we think we'll have for experimental features. And these, if we get all of these in, that gives us 4 slots basically. And so that's what we're doing
Because policy
here by
attachment
taking.
is 2, basically.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. It is 2x. I mean, it's 2 because there are actually 2 gaps for this, but it really could be 2 just because it's so huge in terms of size.
Yes.
So yeah, that's how we got to this point. I think it was Candace also proposed TLS route. Maybe there are others we're thinking that we missed that we should try and be pushing forward. I never want to be in a place where if something meets all the graduation criteria, then we just say, no, we don't want to graduate it yet. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, if we can get something to meet graduation criteria in a release cycle, then I want to be supportive of that. As long as there's not other, huge swirling unknown questions in the same space. But yeah, Candace, you've got a hand.
I just wanted to know, just get some idea of what it would take to get the TLS route to move to standard. We can talk about it at another meeting, but
yeah, no, we should talk about that.
I know it's
I guess
missing the gap. It doesn't have a gap because it predated the requirement for gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a minimum, doing the groundwork of gap plus conformance tests. I don't think we have conformance tests for TLS route, right? I could be.
Anders has been working on those for a while, Rob.
We have a couple.
Well, I thought that was back in TLS policy, right? Not TLS
both
route. Oh,
Yep.
both. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I also only knew about the backend TLS policy conformance test, so it's good to know that TLS route is in progress.
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, I mean, that's, our graduation criteria is, pretty, well, I don't want to say straightforward, but the baseline is the gap, the conformance tests and documentation, and then broad implementation. My biggest concern about TLS route is there could be some overlap with this like connection coalescing and our listener isolation thing. Because if you think of what TLS route does over, say, TCP route, is it's basically adding SNI matching on top. That is the difference between TLS route and TCP route. And what this doc is saying is, hey, the way we're doing like SNI matching per listener is not safe or not ideal, and we should revisit that. And so TLS route is 100% wrapped up into this discussion. So my concern is that until we have a clear resolution here, TLS route is going to be hard to be confident about. That's my opinion.
I don't think that's a reflection on TLS route, right? I mean,
yeah,
we have to deal with the connection thing irrespective, but I think I agree that it makes sense.
But if we have, I think
it makes sense to hold off until after. If
we have to change things to solve the connection coalescing problem, then having another standard thing that we have to change would suck.
Yep.
That's sort of the thing. The biggest hold up there is just like
I'm sorry. Let me phrase that differently. I think that ongoing work for trying to document what is up with TLS route and have conformance tests for it is not misplaced. I think that I completely agree that we don't want to take it to standard before having some ideas about the connection coalescing thing. And on the connection coalescing thing, we did talk about how we should have a meeting for this, and then I didn't do anything with it. I don't think anybody else did. So should we try for that after, like in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or do we think that's just a lost cause?
No, it's definitely not a lost cause. I definitely want to schedule that. Probably early December is the right time frame. I did add it to these notes again. Just, we got a few people volunteering, mentioning they're interested. If anyone else is interested, just, add your name to this list. I'll try and find you on Slack and, coordinate a time that works for people.
If you put your Slack handle behind your name, then that would also help.
Yeah. All these folks, I know how to get you on Slack, but if I haven't, chatted with you much on Slack, a Slack handle would be real helpful too.
Okay, so I can totally understand putting the discussion for connection coalescing. Is that what we called listener merging before, and we had a different paper?
Different
This
issue,
is
sadly.
this is a different thing. Yeah. So connection coalescing. I want to give a very brief summary so that everyone can understand what we're talking about. So when you are doing a TLS connection, HTTP2 in particular, but other is the main culprit, but it allows you to do requests to multiple host names that match the certificate down the same connection, down the same TLS connection. So if you have a star.example.com listener and you go to bar.example.com, then in this case you go to foo.example.com, your browser will say, oh, I already have a certificate for star.example.com, therefore I'm going to use the same connection to that I'm using for bar.example.com. And that will mean that you will end up at this listener, and by the RFC, the correct thing to do is to send a 421, which is not well implemented in both proxies and in browsers. So this particular problem is a problem because although there is a mechanism described in RFCs for it, it is not well implemented, and lots of people don't do the right thing. It is a particular concern if you have certificate auth for one of the things, because that means that you might be able to bypass the certificate auth if the gateway implementation does not set up its routes exactly correctly. And so a large part of this is, discussing what does this mean, but also what are the requirements we have about what the behavior should be in this case.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Got it.
It's kind of relevant. It's to some extent it's relevant to the listener set / merging discussion, in that it will be easier to end up with a situation where you have a wildcard and a specific host name in a listener set situation, because they might be in different objects, but the key mechanism doesn't change.
Yeah, I mean, that the biggest thing I would say this blocks with certainty is we added in 1.21, I forget which one. We added client cert validation inside a listener, and if you had client cert validation here, and in that example Nick just provided, if your client was reusing a connection you already had to this listener, you'd effectively have bypassed that client cert validation, which
If
would
your
be
implementation doesn't
nasty.
do the 421 thing properly, and
Right,
your browser
right.
doesn't do the 421
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah. But it's just, but it's just this kind of these things have a way of piling on top of each other, where everything in isolation makes sense if you believe your foundation is strong. But if your foundation is fundamentally flawed, building on top of it is reckless, I guess you could say. And so that would be my concern here with TLS route or anything else. It's not that TLS route itself is flawed. It's just the foundation below it could be.
We can just disallow wildcard certs. That'll be fine.
Yeah. So you joke, but one of the ideas I've heard is just don't allow any overlapping host names ever in a gateway, basically.
I mean, yes, tongue firmly in cheek, but I have been kind of trying to think through some of that as well, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think,
there's going to be sorry, you go, Candace.
Oh, I was going to say my question is answered. I don't want to divert from the rest of the meeting for too long, but my question is answered about TLS route. It's not being wiped out. At least we haven't decided whether it's being wiped out. And hopefully it wouldn't be wiped out unless we had a way to just to still do TLS pass through. That's all
I think there definitely have been discussions about what utility does having an extra route there add. Those are closely related to what utility does the TCP route and UDP route add. But I think that anything we want to do on that would, if we wanted to do some experiments in that regard, we need to be able to mess with the listener stanza, which is very hard in Gateway, but would be less hard if listener set was a thing. And so if we wanted to play around with that and do some tests, having listener set available would make that a lot easier to sort of do some validation, like what would it look like or something like that. That is probably a 1.4 release timeframe kind of deal in my mind, because we are so.
Because
I don't know.
1.3 is already big enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess so. I think I'd like to just I'd like to quickly hit just the rest of the things in the thing, because I would like to talk about for the 4 experimental features what the next steps are at some point. So I'll put that at the end of the agenda, but I would really like us to get to that because I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Nick, when the time comes, I would like to talk with you a little bit too about the utility of TLS route and TCP route, but I would really like to not derail this meeting with that.
Yep.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't mind adding something to the end, I think that's something we should talk about, and this is a good meeting for that. But leaving it till the end of the meeting is useful, because if people just don't care or have heard this conversation too many times, they can drop off. But I care strongly about this. So
We're glad
yeah.
you care, Rob.
Thank you. All right. With that said, Ian, policy attachment to gateway class. I think you're up if you are
Yeah,
on this call.
I'm here. I don't know if we want to wait for Mike. He's also interested in the topic. We're both here from Istio though, so maybe we can proceed a little bit.
There are too many mics. Which one are you talking about?
Oh, Mike
Morris.
Morris. Sorry.
Just
Yep.
checking.
Which
Mike is overloaded. Noted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, like you mentioned Istio, I thought Istio often just didn't recommend using gateway class, or just kind of inferred Istio as a gateway class. What do you have many Istio users that install a gateway class?
Yes. Yeah. So like I guess traditionally we had our own sort of concept of gateway and folks could use that. For our new like data plane model, we're trying to have our entire like layer 7 based on gateway API. And so it becomes much more important to not just like do an Istioism and assume that it's fine and internal and won't affect anyone else. We're really trying to stay sort of conformant for this new data plane implementation, if that makes any sense. I don't want to get too deep into it.
Yeah.
Probably not relevant for everyone here, but
yeah.
But yeah.
Cool, okay.
So, traditionally what we would do is someone would like jam policy into the namespace where our controller runs. And we would just assume, okay, well, this is the global policy. An administrator wrote it in there, and this is the stance that anything that doesn't implement its own policy or specify its own policy, it will get this. That was all well and good, but sort of translating that into Gateway API wasn't fully clear, at least to me. We could do the same sort of thing if you put a policy in by the controller and sort of hack it together, but the sort of more conformant way seemed to be to attach it to the gateway class, right? And then it becomes your default. That's a little bit weird because our policies are all namespaced. So it got a little bit into the weeds, and we just weren't sure if anyone else had solved this, or if anyone else was thinking about it.
Thank you for raising this. I have actually been on the side where I was kind of hoping to distinguish by gateway class. So I was coming at this from a different perspective, where in GK we're going to have the same policies be usable by different gateway classes. So it might be useful, like if you're reusing, say, a service for both an ILB pointing to it and XLB pointing to it, and you want different config, you'd want to be able to like differentiate that somehow by parent, and gateway class felt like a rough way to do that. This is a completely different take on that, but with some shared implementation details, maybe. I don't know, right? Where you know, there's still some overlap in terms of policy targets gateway class or has some concept of the gateway class. What I would be curious about is gateway class has a params field already where you can like call out to params, right? It kind of is the inverse of policy attachment, or the opposite direction at least. Uh, have you explored that? Are there specific reasons that doesn't work here? You just, you know, are these policies that you're wanting to attach at multiple different levels and you just kind of want this ultimate top level attachment point?
We thought that this would be like a very familiar to the users. I guess if that makes any sense, like it would just sort of mirror the thing. When we were talking with the users, some of them were like, you know, trying to do this type of thing already, and just getting, you know, it doesn't validate, like, so you can't do it in Istio. But yeah, I mean, the params ref could be an interesting other option. I hadn't looked at that too deeply.
Yeah, I think
Is anyone
in terms of sort of defaulting settings, that is definitely originally what we intended params ref to be for, and it does have the advantage that it's way easier to discover. I completely see what you're saying about if you're using policy in the rest of the hierarchy, then using policy at the gateway class level does kind of make sense, especially if it's the same policy. But then you do end up with the same discoverability problem we talked about many times before with policy, where it's difficult to make there be good hints on the object that the thing that a policy is affecting your object. I think Quadrant does a good job of this with their domain prefixed policy affected conditions, but yeah, but it's difficult to do that unless you have something like that.
I see.
It is, you probably dug through this already, but obviously if you look back at our infamous gaps for policy attachment, you can see this fun diagram where we had an intent for gateway class as a target and an asterisk to nowhere. I'm sure this asterisk went somewhere at some point, but as far as I know now, it goes nowhere. So,
If it makes you
but
feel
yeah,
any better, I've never seen a place where it went.
okay, sweet. So the clearly calling out the gateway class is some kind of special case, but also, yeah, that's exactly. We reserve the right to do whatever we want here. That's perfect. So I don't know. I think it's entirely reasonable, clearly within the goals of policy attachment for it to be able to target a gateway class.
100%. So
yeah. So
yeah, I think that was definitely the original intent, that you could. The questions that we would have now are sort of with the value of hindsight about about the discoverability problem, about about that sort of about what's the user experience going to be for how, if I have a HTTP route, how will I know that there's a policy attached to the gateway class that my HTTP route eventually rolls up to, that's going to change something about my HTTP route. Like that's sort of the biggest concern. Like policy attachment is by definition like spooky action at a distance, and so like it's like, I mean, it's sort of
That's the pull quote for this meeting, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, it's my thing, so like I got to own it. Like that.
Well, yeah.
A large, that's what we built, but that a large part of what we built is action at a distance. And so we've got to kind of come in I think one of the things that we have determined through talking about policy attachment is that the barn door is definitely open and the horse is like miles down the road. And so like now what we got to do is try and figure out the best ways to manage the problem that we've created. yeah, the discoverability problem. Now that discoverability problem is documented in exhaustive detail in GEP 2649, which is the inherited policy GEP. Yes, I do know all of the GEP numbers for policy attachment off the top of my head. And so like, yeah, I definitely would recommend that anyone who's interested in this area, like, have a really good read of that GEP. It is going to change. Like, read it with a grain of salt, because that is literally what the policy attachment stream for standard is going to be, is updating that GEP and sort of updating both the direct and inherited policy attachment GEPs to probably put them back together into one thing, but yeah, and clarifying the language a bit and making some of this stuff a bit clearer and putting in some more suggestions. But at least the problem is pretty clearly defined in there. Anyway.
So not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but just for kicks, I wanted to find the origin of this asterisk, because this diagram originated here and the asterisk still does not go anywhere. So I don't know. You can blame me for this one.
Yep, it's all your fault, Rob.
There you go.
That's wow.
Look, I'm definitely living in a glass house and throwing stones here, because I created this whole
you and me both.
I'd like to emphasize that last point about the discoverability issues. Actually, I would also like to emphasize I'm the one who typed all those notes, so if I got it wrong, then, you know, edit, right? I've actually gone so far as to say that I am opposed to using policy attachment for table stakes features. The discoverability issues with policy attachment are the reason for that. Please do not underestimate them.
Yeah. So, I think that's actually probably good. I think we should. So, Ian, like, to answer your question, yeah, we need to talk more about this 100%. I think a large part of this discussion is going to be as part of bringing policy attachment to standard. So you're definitely going to need to involve Guy here, since it's, yeah, he is leading that. Obviously, he and I will be working closely on this because, you know, I've got a lot of context on policy attachment that he doesn't. But I can't make it easily to the meetings that he can make it to, that you all can make it to as well. So, so yeah, I think we're going to have to be a bit async in those discussions. So yeah.
You can also start up an entire like non-US Gateway API meeting time that just throws out US from the equation, and you know, then you two can actually maybe meet. Yeah.
See you all later. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make my own meeting.
Cool.
Take my meeting and go home.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so
I think Candace.
I recognize I went. I skipped over some things. Let me run back up. This is kind of a recap. So I know we kind of went through standard, we went through experimental, we talked about this connection coalescing bit, and a reminder, yeah, if you're interested, please, you know, add your name, Slack handle, whatever. I hope everyone can edit this. Please feel free to just drop your name directly in the list. If you don't want to do that, you can also just leave a comment. Whatever works. We're happy to have more people. That's what I would say. The other thing I wanted to call out real quick is that there are a couple things that are very related to Gateway API that will have some folks from Gateway involved that will end up affecting us, but are not actually tracked by any of this work. And so that's just to highlight how busy of a time this is going to be. One, there's this LLM routing project. The project itself is very poorly named. I will say that very clearly. What I view this project as is basically, I've described it in 3 steps fairly well before, but basically, 1, it's a set of APIs for extending Gateway API to support LLM routing. 2, it's a common extension mechanism so Gateway APIs can support that. You know, and then 3, it's kind of a reference implementation of one extension that can fit into that model with the idea that other extensions could also do the same thing, right? So that is what this thing is doing. It is useless on its own. The thing that's called LLM Instance Gateway is not actually a gateway. It's an extension to Gateway API. So just to be clear, the intent is to plug in to Gateway implementations. I think the first implementation
better based on Envoy.
Okay, fair point. So this is
I'm
starting
going to
with
keep hammering you on that one.
no, okay. So the extension mechanism we are using today is xproc, which is based on Envoy. Absolutely. There are many ideas, ways, whatever, to support more data planes than Envoy here, right? More
And
protocols, or maybe you add a shim. I don't know what that looks like, but although we're starting with Envoy, I don't think we need that to be a forever limitation, right?
yeah, I wanted to point out that the idea that somebody else could write an xproc handler, could write a thing that provides
Yeah.
xproc that you could use, absolutely 100% a thing that could be true. But it is interesting that if you go and read that thing, then it explicitly says that we are going to do this starting off as an Envoy thing, not as a Gateway API thing. And
yeah. There's a lot of things in this repo that are confusingly, poorly worded at a minimum, I would say. I will try and find some time to clean it up. This is one where keep in mind that so this project is primarily being led right now by working group serving folks. So they are ramping up on Envoy and networking terminology. So where some things are said, it may not mean exactly what we think it means. That's what I'll say.
The old using the same word to mean different things problem. We've never had that problem before.
Oh no, that's never an issue. That's never an issue in Kubernetes.
So yeah, I think just to be clear for folks sort of following along home, like I think my opinion on a lot of this is that I think that it's likely to see that this is relevant for people who are interested in the particular field, but the main relevance for the main specification is going to be probably later when the Instance Gateway folks have done stuff and have some outputs to report and say, oh, we think that this thing that we built might be more generalizable, and we'd like to bring something like that back to Gateway API. I think particularly the basic idea of like an external processor that can make load balancing decisions for you is kind of interesting in terms of sort of larger Gateway API, more generic uses that would then be a more standard way to add this thing to Gateway API. But I wouldn't want to see, I would want to see some sort of proof of work and some like examples of how that works in the real world before we started talking about making it more generic. Like I think right now this is basically at effectively implementation specific phase, and it's awesome that y'all are bringing it back and making sure that everybody knows about it. But like I think that it's important that we don't spend too many Gateway API cycles on something that may not directly be relevant for the specification right now. Given that we have a lot of bandwidth on stuff that we know is relevant for the specification in the next few months.
Yeah, this is what I would say is if you own an implementation of Gateway API and you've been hearing, hey, I really want to be able to handle routing to LLM workloads better. Here's a framework plugin extension that you can just plop into your existing Gateway implementation and it'll work and it will, integrate with other extensions in the future. That's the idea, right? That's trying to provide some kind of standard mechanism here, but that's all.
Also, if you're in that situation, you should go back to OpenAI and demand that they move the modeled stuff into a header.
That too. Yeah.
That information should be in headers. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I really want to keep us moving, Rob, because
so
15 minutes left. So yep. And same for, it's basically very similar for admin network policy. This is relevant for folks who are thinking about Gamma implementations. This discussion that Rob is talking about there, so yeah, thank you for the ping here. I have ensured that I have I have marked myself as being notified on this one because I don't usually watch this repo, so I will go and check that PR out.
For a bit of context, Friday afternoon when all of us were basically dead at KubeCon, we found a little bit of remaining energy to talk about, like, hey, what would happen if we like did some kind of identity-based policy via network policy with some of the network policy folks. It was a great conversation, especially considering how little energy we had left at that point. And Surya translated that into a great discussion here. If
I don't
you're
know.
interested,
I don't know if Leo walked away thinking that I was that great after that conversation, because I was a bit mean. I'm sorry.
I was telling
I was very
I
tired.
was telling you I loved it. I actually expect more of it.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Okay.
Okay. So
Well,
last thing is
I think
just
we
to be
made
clear,
it.
this get phase finishes on January 21st. Let's call that out again for the recording. Just
Yeah, and please, I know we say this about every get phase, every kept phase, every like it's not like reviewers just get infinite bandwidth the week of a freeze and just can review
yeah.
everything at the last minute and have infinite time. Please get stuff in early. Otherwise, it'll we're just not going to have time to review it, and it's not going to make it in, and that's unfortunate. But yeah.
Yep. And that has definitely happened. Even last version, there was some stuff that got missed because we found issues with it in the final reviews, and there was just not enough time to fix them because none of us could get to it before then. So
I have a technical question on it. Like, is the robot like balance the reviewers, or it doesn't care? It just randomly select reviewers for gaps.
It's supposed to be random, but and it's supposed to choose from reviewers.
It's extremely complicated. I would say for GEPs, don't worry too much about who the assigned reviewer is. If you are interested, just review it, right? Like that. The assigned reviewer for GEPs doesn't mean anything, right? Like,
no, because I'm asking because sometimes I get like maybe a lot of reviews. Sometimes I don't get any. So like, if one of us is pretty overloaded, maybe we could balance it.
Yeah, I do recommend if you're overloaded, just like remove yourself and like call it out that you don't have time, but please somebody else take a look. That's better than it just sitting there.
Yes, definitely. I mean, for me, like this is not scalable for other people probably, but because this is such a large part of the job I'm actually paid to do, I just watch all the PRs. So like, basically, if you have done something on Gateway API in the last 5 years, probably I have seen it.
Then.
Yeah, like so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do watch basically everything in that repo.
I have the same problem. I do not recommend it. It makes your GitHub notifications awful. But yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we've got 12 minutes. Nick, I think you wanted to run through your next steps for experimental.
So So I just wanted to talk about the next steps that I know of for things that are in experimental, basically because I want to be able to tell people about what I'm going to do and ask for help. For listener sets, Dave, I know that's yours, but I owe a PR to the listener Go docs to finish clarifying what distinct means. So I just wanted everyone to know I haven't forgotten about that. I'm going to try and get that done this week. And then I think that will make the discussions about listener set a little easier because the distinct word is important because currently, to give a very quick summary, currently a set of listeners, like a slice of listeners in a gateway, must be distinct. Distinct meaning a specific thing, and that's what I'm going to clarify. And then with the intent being that when we have listener set, the total superset of all listeners across all listener sets plus the gateway will also need to be distinct. And we'll need to have rules around how that works between different listener set objects and stuff like that. So again, making sure that we have a very clear definition of what a distinct listener is going to be key for the success of listener set. So I will make sure I do that PR this week. Okay. Any questions there before I move on? Okay. So for auth, I have been working with a contributor who put her hand up to do her first contribution, and she picked the auth gap as her first contribution, which I told her at the time was very brave. After working with her on it for a while, she's done some really great work on a draft that we've been working on together. but it is very intimidating, and so like I'm gonna pick that up and finish off that work. She'll be a co-author on the PR that I opened for the initial auth.
Is she on this
provisional.
meeting?
No, Jen is not. Jen Gao is her name. Oh, Jen, I believe you are. Is that you in the list?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Thank you very much, Nick, for actually trying to find more work for me. And I do feel very difficult to actually start to work on that project as my project. And but meanwhile, I still feel very excited about it. As I'm thinking that if that's really a great feature that could bring a lot of impact to the community, so which I feel very amazed of.
Cool.
Thanks, Jen. And yeah, like I said, I really appreciate all awesome work you've done so far on the GEP. So my other hope for this week is that I can get some time to get an initial provisional GEP PR for the auth GEP up. Again, this provisional one is the introduction and background and prior art sections only. No solutions in this one yet. So yeah, I'm hoping to get that done either this week or next week, depending on how much more I need to write on what we've got already. But yeah, so I just wanted to call out Jen's great work and say, yes, I am on the hook for that as sort of leading the auth discussion. And then I think once that PR is in, then I think it will be more productive to start having discussions about what any API we want to build for this actually looks like, which will probably start out as a Google Doc. And so the other reason that I'm talking about this is for the folks who want to leading features. I really recommend doing this sort of iterative process on your GEP document. Don't just open a PR that takes your GEP straight to experimental, because your GEP PR will end up with 300 to 500 comments, and it will be very difficult and very stressful. Split your GEP work up into, describing what the problem is and who the problem is solving for and why we even care about this problem. Do that first, because that puts everyone on the same page. Don't do the API implementation in the same PR as you do that bit, because that is a recipe for people arguing backwards and forwards on your PR for a long time and missing the time frame. So that has happened many times to people before. I'm sure Candace could speak well about the pain that sort of thing can cause in terms of like bandwidth to actually understand what the backwards and forwards. And so I really want to emphasize to folks, especially folks who it's their first time leading a feature, like do things as iteratively as possible, and it will be much easier. One of the glories and the pains of the fact that we have a big active community is that there are a lot of people interested in what's going on here, and there are a lot of opinions. That actually ends up being good for the end result, because we get a well thought out solution generally from having a lot of people with a lot of different opinions. But so, and Candace called out in the chat that yes, that is the standard procedure, but like that procedure, or what I'm trying to emphasize here is that procedure exists for a reason, because when we didn't do that, it has been very painful for everyone involved. And so please do that. Yeah. Please. It will be better for you. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about, that I will try and get some movement on there soon. Dave, I'd like to catch up with you at some point about listener sets once I get this initial round of stuff done. Because I'd like to be involved there too. And then I got to talk to Guy about policy attachment as well. So I am on the hook for a lot of stuff this cycle.
Yeah, so... I also, of this list, I mean, I care about every single one of these. I am cautiously optimistic that cores is going to be a relatively straightforward one.
Mm-hmm.
The retries may be second most straightforward, but I recognize anything with budgeting is going to be complicated. And then listener sets, I really, this is one I really care a lot about. I know Nick and I collaborated on a doc and Dave collaborated on a doc that kind of set some ideas for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dave, keep me in the loop. I want to be involved and helpful here. And because this is so large, I'd love to have something, aim for, especially for our larger GEPs, to have them in review, mid-December, early December, you know, kind of, so we have like at least a month to go back and forth on them. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm on vacation Thursday, so
Cool.
only for a week. Only for a week.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the main reason why we extended the GEP phase until the 21st of January, because I think we can safely guarantee that almost everyone involved in the project will be on holiday for at least 1 week, probably 2, sometime in this time frame, right? Like, yeah, hopefully anyway. I hope you're all taking holidays, because geez. Yeah.
Nick, actually no, Jen was the one who was asking about policy attachment and auth, because I had opinions there. And then Rob helpfully locked the issue before I could write anything. So Rob saved me a bunch of effort of writing. I really appreciate that. I don't know, when's a good time to get together and catch up about that?
I think let me try and get the initial provisional PR in first before we start talking about like whether or not filters policy, blah blah blah. And that's where I think that I think that the right way to go there, so that we can go more async on this, is probably Jen and I will bang out a doc together as well with some API samples of like what various things could look like, and then we can like edit and comment on that doc, and with pros and cons and all that sort of stuff, and that way we can bring this a bit more async and only go synchronous when we need to.
Nick, are you planning to include other people, like, because we had some good discussions on North-South sauce during KubeCon?
Yeah, of course. Like, it's more just the initial draft. Like, I'll do the initial draft with like some ideas that Jenna and I have already talked about. Just because it's way easier to do an initial draft with a very small set of people, and then sort of have people, and then I'll open it up for editing so people can add their own things as well, right? Like,
I'm just interested if you're planning to like implement some of the feedback from the meeting, like it's all
captured. Yeah, totally. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's all I wanted to say for the experimental things. I would encourage anyone else who's watching this who is leading a feature, please, I would like to see us do like review the next steps for the various GEPs for the next few weekly meetings. Like, so we have a repeating section that's like, where are the current features up to, just so that we can ping people and say, hey, can you tell us where things are up to? Are you blocked? You know, like basically like a weekly-ish stand-up-y kind of deal, just so that we can keep these things moving and make sure people don't forget about them.
Yeah, I agree. One, you know, as we're transitioning, I think, yes, and this kind of excludes a couple other things here, which are all the standard features we're trying to make progress on. So maybe we should have a standing item,
a separate item for the things that are standard and where they are at as well. Yes.
So yeah, as we're in this phase, we should probably check in every single meeting on where we are for everything we're trying to push forward on. And then the other thing I want to say is I missed kind of the obvious things up here, and I do want to go back and mention, hey, ingress to gateway is a thing that's still moving and growing, and we can't let that one go. And also Gateway Cuddle is also running on its own release cycle. So we've got lots and lots of things in flight as a community. And so just don't forget all the different threads that people are involved in that are just Gateway API. And I know we ourselves are just a sub project. So yay.
And by the way, this is a good opportunity. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was saying it's a good opportunity as well to get more involved, you know, through some of these, you know, other side projects. A lot of them intersect a lot with Gateway. So I can talk from experience. Started a lot in Ingress to Gateway, and like it got a lot more involved in other areas of that community.
Yeah, huge plus one. Like if you're new to the community and you're looking for ways to help out, a lot of the issues in Gateway can be kind of overwhelming, and Ingress to Gateway and Gateway Cuddle provide you with lots of opportunities to just write code instead of like, oh, I'm going to write a new API spec and deal with all the intricacies of that. These are great opportunities that are kind of immediately useful too, whereas an API has kind of a longer role. And I know both projects have lots of work that could be done if you have time. So +1. And I'd also say that Ingress to Gateway and Gateway Cuddle have been a great way for people to get their Kubernetes org membership. So yeah, +1 on all that. The other thing I want to call out real quick is I think we've effectively run out of time for this one. That's fine. One of the things I would love to collect somewhere is just people that are using TCP route and UDP route and TLS route even, but particularly if they're using them with gateways. I would love to get experience and reports from people using this with gateways, and if it feels useful for them or if it's overly repetitive, verbose, etc. But I would love to get some feedback just from users. If anyone can help collect that feels like it would be a useful starting point here. And if we can't collect that signal. If we get a lot of reports, that's also signal.
Is that in the Gateway API survey by any chance?
Mattia is the Gateway API survey expert. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Do you have a place where you want it to be linked, the use cases? Because I mean,
I don't know. I mean, maybe someone starting up a discussion would be good.
I'm not sure if this one is related, but I've just linked to the chat one of the things that Adam he just popped in one of our meetings. This could be.
Yeah, I think that discussion is definitely relevant, but I'd like to see a I'll make a discussion momentarily that is let's collect use cases, people's use cases for TCP route, UDP route, and TLS route.
Okay. TLS route has a discussion up.
Does
already,
cool. Yeah, okay.
But
Excellent, thank you.
It's not covering UDP or TCP.
Yeah, so maybe I think TLS route is probably going to have more usage and more, so maybe let's just have the follow-up discussion be focused on TCP and UDP route, because those are probably a little clearer to separate. Cool. All right. Well, we've passed time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nick, for following up with an issue there or discussion, whatever that will be. Yeah, I think that's all. If you're in the US, happy early Thanksgiving. Hope you have a good time, and or wherever you are. And with that, I think we'll call it and talk to everyone next week. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Cheers.
Happy holidays.
Okay, hold on. Thanks, folks. Sorry, I was just putting those links into the doc. Cheers. I'll see you all around.